Line defects are just for the namesake. We will be talking about what type of point defects are there. So point defects, if we talk about and memorize all these points, stoichiometric defect means there is a definite ratio of impurity. So there will be definite ratio per atom of the element we are talking about, per atom of the solid we are talking about. So there will be four types of stoichiometric defects: vacancy defect, interstitial defects, Frankel defect, Schottky defect. We will be talking about these in detail. You need to first remember how many types of stoichiometric defects are there. Four types of stoichiometric defects are there: vacancy, interstitial, Frankel, Schottky. Vacancy and interstitial are basically as the name says. Frankel and Schottky are on the basis of the name of the scientist. Then we have impurity defects. Everything here we are talking about is a sort of impurity, but here when I explain, you will see that it is different from what we call impurity defect. Then we have C, non-stoichiometric defects, and there again there are some parts of it of non-stoichiometric defects: metal excess defect and metal deficiency defect. When we say stoichiometric defect, these are also called intrinsic or thermodynamic defects. A vacancy defect, as the name suggests, when some of the lattice sites are vacant, the crystal is said to have vacancy defect. And how it can happen? If you heat the solid, okay, some atoms lose their positions. For example, here, some positions are vacant. No atom is there in the lattice. So lattice is there, but some atoms are missing. So in that case, due to vacancies, we will call it vacancy defect. And as you can notice, that it will decrease the density of the substance because atoms are missing. It will decrease the density of the element or solid. Can also develop when a substance is heated. So that's why the name thermodynamic defect. When it is heated, some atoms can get displaced from their position and vacancies can be created. Next is interstitial defect. Before I explain that, we need to understand the meaning of interstitial. Interstitial means in the space between, in the space between something. That is called interstitial. For example, if I have a lattice here, then the space which is there here, all this space, free space, is actually interstitial space. The space between the atoms of the lattice or space within the lattice is known as interstitial space. When some constant particles, atoms or molecules, because a solid can be made of atoms, solid can be made of molecule also, occupy interstitial site, then the crystal is said to have interstitial defect. You can understand it from this diagram. These two atoms here are extra. These are within the interstitial sites. These are not part of original lattice. Okay, as per the calculated lattice, these should have not been there. Okay, if we talk about perfect lattice, these should not be there. So these are extra atoms there. That's why it is known as interstitial defect, because these atoms are present in interstitial spaces. That's why interstitial defect. And now, as you can guess, in terms of density, density will increase. So it increases the density of the substance because extra atoms are there. So it increases the density of the substance. Next, Frankel defect. First is that it is ionic, shown in ionic solid. These two, when we talk about vacancy defect and interstitial defect, we talked about the same molecule, same type of molecule. So all these are same. Okay? So if it is iron, all atoms are of iron. If it is ice, all molecules are of H2O, H2O, H2O. Similarly, in interstitial defect, all atoms are same. So there are no two different type of atoms or different type of molecules. But rest two of stoichiometric defects, that is Frankel defect and Schottky defects, these are shown by ionic solids. And it is basically actually similar to vacancy and interstitial defect. I'll explain why. The smaller ion, these are shown by ionic solids. The smaller ion, which is usually cation, is dislocated from its normal site to an interstitial site. So it creates a vacancy defect at its original site where it was, but it creates interstitial defect where it goes to its new location. If you try to understand, so that's why it is also known as dislocation defect. It gets dislocated from its original position to a new position. It does not change the density because it has not moved out, it has just got dislocated. So try to understand here. When I said that normally cation, okay? So see here, there would have been a positive cation, but this cation actually moved to this interstitial space. So here it caused a vacancy defect, and here it caused interstitial defect. So Frankel defect is a combination of vacancy and interstitial defects, but in ionic compounds. We know what is vacancy defect, we know what is interstitial defect, but at the same time, if both happen same simultaneously in an ionic compound, then it is known as Frankel defect. Next, now the condition, and this is normally, okay, because there is one compound, one ionic compound, which shows both Frankel defect as well as Schottky defect. So it's not very hard and fast rule, what I'm saying here. Frankel defect is shown by ionic substances in which large difference in size of ions. These cation and anions have large difference. And that is logical because if the anions are not large, if anions are not large, the space amongst them will not be large enough so that cation can be there. Understand it like this. So if suppose these are the anions and cation is of this size cannot fit in between. Okay? The size which can fit in between is just this one. That means there must be the difference in size between anion and cation. Only then it can show Frankel defect. Examples are these ones: the zinc sulfide, silver chloride, silver bromide, silver iodide. And remember, as I said, one of these shows Schottky defect as well. So this condition is not very rigid. Okay? But largely, if it is asked, you will say that Frankel defect will be shown by those ionic solids in which the cation, there is large difference between cation and anion size. So for example, here Zn2 plus is very small, sulfide ion is very large. Yeah. Next Schottky defect. Again in ionic solids. Okay? It is a vacancy defect in ionic solid. Frankel defect, both vacancy and interstitial defects simultaneously. Schottky defect is actually vacancy defect in ionic solid. How it can happen? This is actually balancing the charges. In order to maintain electrical neutrality, the number of missing cations and anions are equal. Normally, if we talk about NaCl, if one NaCl Na plus goes out, one Cl will go out of the solid so that the solid became neutral again. Okay, solid was neutral, solid has to remain neutral. So if somehow a vacancy defect is created, a cation goes out or an anion goes out, okay, one cannot go out. Both will go out so that the solid remains neutral. Now suppose the condition is not of NaCl, okay? Or even if the condition is of NaCl, suppose we are talking about, in this case, Na, Na, these were removed. Okay, so sorry, this one is positive. Positive removed from here, negative removed from here, negative removed from here, and positive removed from here. So if it is in NaCl, this will be the defect. And you can see that both are being removed. So if one Na plus is going, one Cl minus is going. So this is actually creating the vacancies in this case. So it is vacancy defect in ionic solid. But suppose we are talking about it is not NaCl. And remember, this will decrease the density. Decrease the density. So the only difference between vacancy defect and Schottky defect is that in case of vacancy defect, one atom can go out. Okay? But in case of Schottky defect, if one cation goes out, one anion will go out, or equivalent will go out. So if equivalent will go out, then we talk about the impurity defect. In impurity defect, the difference is that if in molten NaCl, remember in both cases we are talking about NaCl. Here also it was NaCl. Okay. Here also it is NaCl in impurity defect. What is the difference? Okay. Containing a little amount of SrCl2. Now, how SrCl2 can be there? For that, understand it. So these are positives, cation, and these are chlorines, negative. Okay. Now, what can happen that two positives, say these ones, go away. So here vacancy got created. So if I'm talking about Schottky defect, then in that case, two chlorines will also go away. So in that case, it would have been Schottky defect. But suppose in place of these two Na, one Sr2 plus gets in. So it balances the charge because only one ion has plus 2 charge. So it balances the charge of both this one and this one. And in this case, this site remains vacant because the Sr2 plus cation actually balances the charge if it's there. So now read it again. In molten NaCl containing little amount of SrCl2, okay, is crystallized, some of the sites of Na plus ions are occupied by Sr2 plus. But half of the sites will be occupied. So if I say both of these, sodium was not present, only one got occupied by Sr2 plus. One remained vacant. Okay. So now when these two sodium ions went out, then say related chlorines were these ones, say these two, NaCl, NaCl. Okay. Now, because there is only one Sr, this will represent SrCl2. Both chlorines are basically now neutralized by Sr2 plus. So it is actually a vacancy defect. Yes, any not atom, rather ion of the opposite charge. In Schottky defect, ion of the opposite charge will go away. Same number. Now I'm going back to just to explain difference in Schottky defect and impurity defect. Here, if you talk about all these four, no other element is introduced in the lattice. So lattice contains only those atoms or ions of which it was made of. And at the same time, in Schottky defect, if one cation goes out, the anion also goes out. But in case of impurity defect, the difference is that if two cations go out and one cation of double the charge gets in, then no chlorines go out, no anion goes out, but instead a vacancy is created. Examples of Schottky defect: NaCl, KCl, CSCl, AgBr. Now this one is common, means shows Frankel defect as well. So although the condition for Schottky defect is just opposite of that, that cation and anion are of almost similar sizes, AgBr shows both the defects. Then non-stoichiometric defects. So impurity defects done. So I'm going back just to show you that where we are. We talked about the whole of the stoichiometric defects, that is vacancy defect, interstitial defects, Frankel defect, which is vacancy plus interstitial, Schottky defect, which is just vacancy defect. Yeah. Then we talked about impurity defects. Impurity defects means impurity. First time you saw that impurity, for example, Sr2 plus got introduced. So some outer ion got introduced, outer element got introduced. That's why impurity defect. Now we are going to talk about non-stoichiometric. Okay, Sudipta. Arohi. If Na plus is occupied by Sr2 plus, doesn't start the Sr2 get vacant. Sr2 plus comes from outside Arohi. It is not present. Okay, you can, if you are able to understand it in a different way, I'm explaining it in a different way, then you will be able to understand. Okay. uh, the this defect. Okay, don't look it like that one Na plus went out, okay, or two Na plus. Okay. Think it like that. Uh, Na plus, Na plus. These were there. So this was like the side. Okay. Then Na plus went out, Cl minus went out. This Na plus went out, this Cl minus went out. Okay. Suppose after that, to balance that, SrCl2 gets in. So if all these sites are vacant, the two chlorines will come here, will occupy the chlorine sites, and one Sr2 plus will come here. This will remain vacant. Is now clear? So you can understand it in this way also, that 2Na plus and 2Cl minus went off, and 2Cl came in, one Sr2 plus came in to balance the charge. Is that clear, Sudipta? Okay. Now, because the charges are balanced from a different element, that's why it is known as impurity defect. In all stoichiometric defects, okay, vacancy defect, interstitial defect, Frankel defect, Schottky defect, in all, no outer element was introduced. But here, first time impurity introduced. That's why impurity defect. Non-stoichiometric defects are those defects in which there is no specific ratio of the impurity. So I'm going back. So for example, here there is a specific ratio. If 2 NaCl go out, then one vacancy will be created. So there is a specific ratio. Here also, if one Na plus goes out, one Cl minus will go out. So definite ratio between cation and anion, always. Okay. So whether it is in vacancy defect or whether it is in Frankel Frankel defect or uh, vacancy defect or interstitial defect, in all cases, it is definite. Okay. So there will be definite ratio that those type of atoms will be there or will not be there. But now we talk about the non-stoichiometric defects. Non-stoichiometric defects, as a result of imperfection, the ratio of number of cations to anions becomes different from that indicated by the ideal chemical formula. Then the defects are known as non-stoichiometric defects. First read it and then I'll explain. Here the main point is the chemical formula. The chemical formula becomes different. So this is the differentiating point in non-stoichiometric defects from other defects. It says the ratio of the number of cations to anions. So for example, if the ratio is XY, 1 is to 1, but it becomes different from 1 is to 1. Say it becomes X 0.96Y. Earlier, one of this corresponded to 1 of Y, 1 of X to 1 of Y, but for each one of Y atom, now there are only 0.96 X atom. So the ratio now is different. This type of ratio is known as stoichiometric defect. And why non-stoichiometric defect and why non-stoichiometric? Because this 0.96 can be X 0.93Y also. So there is no definite ratio. That's why it is known as non-stoichiometric defect. Types of non-stoichiometric defect. metal excess defect and metal deficiency defect. Within metal excess defects, there are two further categorization due to anionic vacancies. Either anions are not present at some sites. So if you see, for example, if I am talking about ZNO, so if oxygen is not present, say at some site, so effectively that is that zinc is in excess. If oxygen is missing, what we can say zinc is in excess. So it means metal is in excess. Second way can be due to presence of extra cations. Cations are obviously of metal, metal 2 plus, metal plus like this. So if metal ions are present at interstitial site, that is also excess of metal. So again, we are not saying impurity defect here because there is no other impurity. It is either the anions are missing or the same cations which are present in the solid are present in interstitial site as well. The second is metal deficiency defect, means metal is less than the expected or ideal chemical formula. First one we are talking about, first part of a metal excess defect due to anionic vacancies. Metal excess defect due to anionic vacancies. This one we are talking about. When crystals of NaCl are heated, just try to memorize that NaCl has appeared at many places. That is example of all those sort of defects. The crystals of NaCl are heated in an atmosphere of sodium vapor. The sodium atoms are deposited on the surface of the crystal. This is slightly tricky to understand. Okay, so understand what I am saying. Pay attention here. When sodium crystal is solid, it is heated in vapor of sodium. Here you have Na plus, Cl minus, Cl minus, Na plus, like this. And it is heated in atmosphere of sodium vapor. Then what happens? That these sodium atoms, remember in sodium vapor, these are metal atoms. These are not ions here. These are atoms. These atoms get stuck to the surface. And these combine with Cl minus, but Cl minus already has one electron. This sodium doesn't have any electron, okay? Has not lost its electron, means it is not Na plus, it is Na. And Cl minus, chlorine is present as chloride ion. Okay. So what happens? The chlorine which is near the surface, it releases its own electron and then gains electron from sodium. Remember what's happening. First chloride ion, which chloride has one excess atom, sorry, electron, it loses that electron and gains the electron from sodium. Now, when it gains the electron from sodium, it is again Cl minus and Na gets converted to Na plus. So these Na plus and Cl minus combine and they form a layer of NaCl again at the surface. But the extra electron it diffuses through the crystal and occupies some interstitial site. Extra electron diffuses through the crystal and occupies an interstitial site. That site will be obviously from where chlorine goes away. Okay. So again, it is not necessary that it is exactly that side from where chlorine goes away, because chlorine anions actually move. So you can see, understand it from the diagram. So suppose this chlorine on the surface, it lost its electron and then gained the electron from sodium and combined with it. Sodium was in vapor phase and sodium gave the electron to this chlorine and NaCl. Now here there is just electron now, nothing else. It is just electron, no anion. So what can happen that this electron is very, very small. Okay. So the space which is there in the lattice is much, much more than required by an electron to travel or to diffuse through the crystal. So this electron can diffuse to some other site. Okay. And on the diffuse site, these chlorine ions can move further. Again, the site can be like this, that there is chlorine, chloride ion, this moved here. Okay, suppose from here to here. And from here to here, this chloride moved. So electron can diffuse to some interstitial site. And these electrons have some wavelength, and that's why these impart color to the crystal. So one important feature of non-stoichiometric defect, and when we are talking about metal excess defect due to anionic vacancies. Why anionic vacancies? Because anion has gone out. The chloride anion has gone out. Vacancy created due to anion. That's why this is known as metal excess defect due to anionic vacancies. So effectively, if you see here, in this crystal, you have less number of anions and comparatively greater number of cations. That's why it is known as metal excess defect. Anion has gone out. That's why due to anionic vacancy. This electron which has diffused through the crystal imparts color. Now, because it imparts color, and in German, the term for color, imparting color, is Farbencenter. So these are also known as F center. F center means Farbencenter. So it's written here. So crystal is now has excess of sodium. The anionic sites occupied by unpaired electrons are called F centers, from the German word Farbencenter for color center. In NaCl, they impart yellow color. So the wavelength of these electrons in NaCl is such that they impart yellow color. And you need to remember these colors, because sometimes there are indirect questions where you will not be asked, you will not be given rather, the exact which crystal we are talking about. Rather, it will be written that it imparts yellow color. It shows metal excess defect due to anionic vacancies and imparts yellow color. Then you need to identify, you should be able to identify that we are talking about NaCl. Uh, Mehak, process of imparting color is like that. If you have understood how this electron remains inside the crystal, okay? So this electron has particular wavelength. And this wavelength is in yellow region. So that's why it imparts yellow color. How this electron remains there, that is something I have explained, that due to sodium atom vapors, okay, the chloride, for example, present here, releases its electron and then gains an electron from sodium and forms NaCl at the surface. The electron diffuses through the crystal, and wherever it is, it imparts yellow color due to its wavelength. So this was for NaCl. But there are other crystals. So for example, if we talk about lithium chloride, okay, then pink. It means in lithium chloride, the electron will have wavelength which falls in pink region. Same non-stoichiometric defect we are talking about. Potassium chloride, violet or lilac. Objective type questions are also asked here. So there can be multiple choice question, and one of the options will be about the right color. Otherwise, as I said, that there can be indirect question. Next, metal excess defect due to the presence of extra cations at interstitial sites. So this is what we talked about here. Metal excess defect due to presence of extra cations at interstitial sites. So in this case, normally example is given of zinc oxide. Zinc oxide on heating loses oxygen. So zinc oxide is white in color at room temperature. On heating, it loses oxygen and turns yellow. So remember, zinc oxide also yellow color range. Now there is excess of zinc in the crystal. Its formula becomes Zn 1 plus XO as compared to oxygen. Now zinc metal is in excess. So the excess Zn2 plus ions move to interstitial sites. So remember why I am not calling it the removal of the anions. Although you might say that here, if oxygen is released, then it means anion is going out. Okay, you might think about that. But what actually happens that when oxygen goes away, the extra Zn2 plus ions move to interstitial sites. Means sites which are already available amongst the cations and anions, zinc and oxygen atoms. So excess Zn2 plus ions move to interstitial sites and the electrons to neighboring interstitial sites. So again here we have electrons, if you see these electrons which are present in crystal. And these impart color to the crystal. In case of ZNO, this is yellow color. Okay. So interstitial site, as I said, the electrons will occupy and Zn2 plus will occupy the interstitial site. Electrons here, Zn2 plus here. Then metal deficiency defect. And this is the last defect of all the types we have talked about. Metal deficiency defect we talked about is basically this one now, metal deficiency defect. There are many solids which are difficult to prepare in the stoichiometric composition and contain less amount of metal as compared to the stoichiometric proportion. So as I explained that if, for example, FeO, I explained it, there can be XY, okay? But if it is not XY, it is says 0.96Y or so. This actually happens in case of iron oxide, FeO. A typical example of this type is FeO, which is mostly found with a composition of 0.950, Fe 0.950. But remember, this is not hard and fast stoichiometric ratio or definite stoichiometric ratio. It can be 0.930, it can be 0.96 as well. So that's why non-stoichiometric, because there is no definite ratio. No definite ratio. The ratio will not be as it should be for ideal formula, but again, it is not a definite ratio. So in a crystal of FeO, why it happens? Okay, why it happens? And from here, numerical questions appear. So you need to be careful. Numerical questions are very much common from this section. In crystal of FeO, you have Fe2 plus because it is Fe2 plus or 2 minus. So these are ferrous, okay? Ferrous oxide, not ferric. So what happens? Some Fe2 plus cations are missing, and the loss of positive charge is made up by the presence of required number of Fe3 plus ions. Understand the difference. It has to be charge neutral. It was earlier charge neutral, Fe2 plus and O2 minus, it was charge neutral. Now, how the charge can be balanced? For that, consider multiple molecules of Fe. Suppose three Fe2 plus are missing. Then the charge can be balanced by 2 Fe3 plus. Because if you remove 3 Fe2 plus, the total positive charge you removed was plus 6, and that can be provided by only 2 Fe3 plus. So it means for these 3 oxygen atoms, now you don't have 3 iron atoms. You have only 2 iron atoms for 3 oxygen atoms. And it can happen for any 3 oxygen atoms. So suppose it happens for this one also. Then you will have here also just 2 Fe3 plus. It can happen for another set of 3 oxygens, another set of 3 oxygens. You don't have any control on it. So the formula actually depends on how many triplets of oxygens have been removed and replaced by, oh sorry, have been, how many triplets of Fe2 plus have been removed and replaced by doublets of Fe plus. So there can be any triplet of oxygen. Again, it can be neutralized by 2 ferric ions. So you don't know how many triplets of oxygens have been neutralized by cuplets of ferric ions. But in any case, the solid will be charge neutral. But now the atoms of iron are not as per standard ideal chemical formula, which is FeO. Now we have less number of iron atoms. So that's why it can be Fe 0.930, Fe 0.950, Fe 0.960, like that. Is that clear? To maintain the charge neutrality, Fe3 plus can replace. So if Fe3 are present there, then it will happen. Okay? Yes, there will be change in density because now you have less number of iron atoms. Okay, good. Shashwat Ashi, good. Now the next section, electrical properties of solids. So up to here, we talked about the defects. And these are all the point defects because these are happening at the site of the atoms or ions. That's why point defects. Line defect is another type of defect, not in syllabus. Next section, electrical property of solids. And you know that solids are conductors, insulators, and semiconductors also. Yes, this is the previous slide. This one. So when we say solids, we say conductivity. And if we are talking about conductors, the solids with conductivity ranging between 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 7 per ohm per meter, these are called conductors. I hope you have studied about conductivity and these things in physics. You just need to remember the range here in chemistry. Insulator, these are the solids which have very low conductivity ranging between 10 to the power minus 10 to 10 power minus 10 per ohm per meter. So range is important, 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 7. Conductors, 10 to the power minus 20 to 10 to the power minus 10 per ohm per meter. Insulators, then there are semiconductors which are in between the conductors and insulators. It is 10 to the power minus 6 to 10 to the power 4. So there is some gap, remember, 10 to the power minus 20 to 10 to the power minus 10 insulators, 10 to the power minus 6 to 10 power 4 semiconductors, 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 7 conductors. The range in between is, neither very good semiconductor nor insulator. Now, this can be understood by this diagram, which is given in your book, but if just I give this diagram, students are not able to understand what we are talking about. So it talks about that there are bands, energy bands, and this is conduction band. Okay, sorry, this is filled band or partially filled band. So why do we call it partially filled band? Because this is whole band considered here, and it is partially filled. Overlapping band means you have one band like this, another band like this. But what these bands are, nowhere explained. What is conduction band? What is non-conduction band? In semiconductor, these are very close. So a small energy gap. Now to understand this one, understand from atomic structure perspective, what this diagram is actually talking about. You have a nucleus, then you have a shell, and in metals, it can be present in third shell, fourth shell, depending on in which period the metal is. Okay. So the electron can be here, and this is valence shell. And understand it, you know, just be attentive. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand that diagram. So in normal state, this metal is not a conductor because the electron is in valence shell. Metal becomes a conductor when we apply a field, okay, for example, electric current through electric current, and these electrons can move to some higher state. And you know that the electricity is due to movement of these electrons. And here, if they move to at higher state level, here they become mobile. Why they become mobile? Because there is least influence of nucleus. Are you able to understand this point? Then they can conduct electricity. So what in this diagram has been mentioned as valence band is energy here. Energy in valence shell. What has been named as conduction band is that shell where the electron becomes mobile. It can move there, okay, on its own. Means it is not in the effect of this nucleus. Now, the nucleus does not have the attractive power such great that it can control the electron. So this is conduction. The energy here is in conduction band, energy here is in valence band. Now you can understand, if you have understood this diagram, it is straightforward. Now you can understand this diagram. In this diagram, it says that there might be some cases where you don't need to excite the electron. Electron is in valence band, and valence band is actually the conduction band also. So this part of this is whole band, this part is conduction, this part is valence. So this energy level is of the same band. So you don't need to provide much energy. The electrons can easily move here to higher energy level and conduct electricity. In few cases, this is the energy level of valence shell. I am calling it valence band. And this is the energy of conduction shell, means I am calling it conduction band. So you can see this much space is common in both. It means here also, you don't need to provide much energy. The electrons can freely move to conduction band. There is overlapping. Both bands are overlapping. Means both energy levels are mapping. So electron can move freely if it has this much energy. If it has this much energy, it can move. So it is in valence band, remember, in that case, but it can move. Now we come to insulators. In insulator, the energy required to move the electrons in higher shells so that it is out of control of nucleus is much higher. Okay. So it is not overlapping in this case. Rather, there is large energy gap which you have to provide so that it moves to higher shell, then higher shell, and then it is not in control of the nucleus. Then it can conduct electricity. So this energy gap is so high that these solids actually behave as insulin. We cannot provide that much energy that the electron can move to conduction band. Then we have something in between that, yes, the empty band is not overlapping. It is not part of the valence shell, but the energy gap is not large. So we can provide some energy, and in this case, few electrons, not all electrons, okay? Only few electrons can move to conduction band and they can conduct electricity. Obviously, some energy will be required. So these will be not good conductors, but semiconductors because the energy required is still there, although some small amount of energy, but it is required. But it is possible to provide that energy. That's why these are conductors, not good conductors, semiconductors. Is that clear? Is this diagram clear? Okay. So if you are confused, just think, okay, Shashwat, good. Just think in terms of shell. Instead of band, think shell. Conduction cell, shell, and valence shell. Okay. Ashi, overlapping bands, what I say, I'm just explaining on that diagram again. Okay. Suppose electron is here. Okay. This is valence shell. And conduction band is, say, this one. Above this one, whatever you have above this one is conduction band. So if you see some part is common, this part is common between valence shell and conduction shell. So it means the electron can freely move. The energy of the valence shell is already some part of the conduction shell. If we provide more energy, obviously if electron goes here, then its mobility will increase. But even in the valence shell, it is mobile because the energy required for conduction is less than the energy which is already possessed by the valence shell electron. So there is some overlapping. That's why we say here it is overlapping bands. So to remove the confusion, I am repeating, instead of bands, if you are confused, instead of bands, think them as shells. Is that clear, Ashi? Okay. This is something you know. Metal conducts electricity in molten state. Conductivity of metal depends upon the number of electrons, valence electrons available per atom. How many electrons are there, valence electrons are there per atom, which can move to conduction band or are already in conduction band if it is overlapping. That will decide how much conductivity is there of that metal. The atomic orbital of metal atoms form molecular orbitals which are so close in energy to each other as to form a band. So this is something I have explained now. In case of semiconductors, the gap between the valence band and conduction band is small. So we can provide that much energy and few electrons can go to conduction band, may jump to conduction band and show some conductivity. Now, the important point here. Electrical conductivity of semiconductors increases with rise in temperature since more electrons can jump to the conduction band. So you provide thermal energy, more electrons will move to valence shell to conduction shell, the valence band to conduction band. So in case of semiconductors, the electrical conductivity increases with temperature. And you know that with temperature in metals, resistance increases rather. In physics, you might have done that. Okay. So the conductivity of metals, conductors actually decreases, but of semiconductors, conductivity increases with temperature. Substances like silicon and germanium show this type of behavior and are called intrinsic semiconductors. Now it will be clear why we are calling it intrinsic semiconductor, because there are extrinsic semiconductors also which have multiple type of atoms. So if it is just one type of atom, if it is just silicon, intrinsic. Just germanium, nothing else, intrinsic. Now the conductivity of these intrinsic semiconductors is too low to be of practical use. So practically they are of no use. The semiconductors are used in diodes, transistors, okay, all electronic devices. Without semiconductor, they can't work. All chipsets, ICs, etc., in your mobile phones, laptops, everywhere, semiconductors are there. So their conductivity is increased by adding an appropriate amount of suitable impurity. So here impurity is of benefit actually. So this process is called doping. Any impurity, addition of impurity is called doping. This question appears in 1 mark. Just what is doping? You need to understand. Doping is the process of increasing the conductivity of semiconductors, of intrinsic semiconductors, by adding suitable impurity. Doping can be done with an impurity which is electron rich or electron deficient. Means either it has excess of electrons or it has less than accepted or less than electrons as per the octet rule. Such impurities introduce electronic defects in them. So these are known as which type of defects? Electronic defects. Because either electrons will be in excess or electrons will be in deficiency. So that's why electronic defects. I'll explain it through the diagram. First, understand it is due to electrons. That's why electronic defects. Electron rich, electron deficient impurities. First, electron rich impurity. Electron rich impurity, if we say just silicon, it is just silicon. All the atoms are of silicon. All right. Now, there can be some energy required, and if energy is provided, some electrons will move to conduction band and it will conduct electricity, which is of no use, no practical use. So, to increase its conductivity, electron rich impurities are added. So, what happens? Now, arsenic. Okay. Here you have all silicon, and these earlier it was just silicon and it was attached with 4 silicons. So it has 4 valence electrons, all 4 bonded. So 4 bonds and valence is satisfied. Here we have replaced 1 silicon by arsenic. Now arsenic is of group 15 element. So if you see carbon, silicon, germanium in lead, and we have nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, bismuth. Okay? So this group has 4 valence electrons. This group has 5 valence electrons. So arsenic has 5 valence electrons, not 4. So 4 are bonded with silicon. And then one of the electron remains free. This. So there is one extra electron which is available for movement. This is called mobile electron. And this electron moves and is responsible for electricity increase in electrical conductivity actually. And because this electron has negative charge, that's why these type of semiconductors are known as N type. N stands for negative. So negative type means electron is responsible for the increase in conductivity of the semiconductor. So this is known as extrinsic semiconductor now. Because now it contains external atom which is arsenic. Now the conductivity is of some use of practical use. So N-type semiconductors. N-type negatively charged electrons. That's why. Now electron deficit impurities or electron deficient impurities. Again, silicon and germanium can also be doped with group 13. So I said group 14 elements with 4 valence shell. Now group 13 elements with 3 valence shell. Okay. Boron, aluminum, gallium, indium, thallium. So these can be doped with these also. Group 13. How it happens? Understand through diagram. Now, earlier silicon, 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 and this one was also silicon, and you had one atom here. It was silicon, and one electron was here. Okay? But now it has boron, and boron has only 3 electrons. One, two, three valence electrons. It means this electron is single electron and bond is not formed. Bond is not formed in this case. They were doping is mixing of any external element in a semiconductor in a in an intrinsic semiconductor to increase its conductivity. Doping is addition of an external atom or element in an intrinsic semiconductor to increase its conductivity. So here again we are doping boron, but electron deficient. It has only 3 electrons, and 3 electrons got bonded with 3 silicon atoms. Now this electron of silicon is not bonded. So what happens? The electron of neighboring bond, say this one, it moves here to make the bond, to make the valency of this silicon complete. Because this silicon should have 4 bonds. So for that, this electron moves to the vacant position. So effectively, it means there was a hole. There was no electron. It means we can say no electron means there was a hole. Why I'm calling it positive hole? I'll explain it. Okay? So what happens that the neighboring electron moves to this position. Now, removal or going away a negative charge from here, negative charge is going away. It means it is creating a positive hole here. So when this electron moved to this one, It means now here a hole created, and you know that when negative goes away, it means something positive is charged is occupied by that. For example, Na, I'm just explaining, okay, that is not related to this one. I am trying to explain why it will be positive. When this sodium loses one electron, this electron goes away, this sodium gets a positive charge. Okay. Similar to this one, this silicon, when electron moves away, this hole created will be actually positively charged. So that's why I am calling it positive hole. Now what can happen? Now there is no electron here. There is no electron now here. So to balance the valency of this silicon, there is a possibility that the electron of neighboring atom gets in. So electron of neighboring atoms, for example, from here to here. This electron moves to make the valency of that silicon balanced. Then a hole will be created here. So it means instead of saying that electron is not moving at all. Okay. What is moving actually? It is a hole which is moving. So first, when electron moved from here to here, actually hole moved from here to here. Then when electron moved from here to here, we can say that hole moved from here to here. So it is movement of hole which is considered as positive charge, and that's why it is known as p-type semiconductor. So remember why I am calling it p-type of semiconductor, because effectively it is due to movement of hole created by movement of electron. So that's why hole is positively charged. It is known as p-type semiconductor. Try to visualize what I am saying. Movement of electron creates hole from original position of the electron. So that's why we can consider it as movement of hole, and holes are positively charged. That's why p-type semiconductor. So you need to remember, if group 14 is doped with group 15, then it is n-type semiconductor. If it is doped with group 13, then it is p-type semiconductor. And why we are doing so? Why we are doing doping? To increase the conductivity up to such a level that it is of practical use. Any confusion? Let me know. Okay. You need to just visualize, okay, the movement of hole and why it has been termed as p-type semiconductor.